emphasize. Chapter 1 Prolemina. Notice to readers: the reader is advised to cast a glance at these tables before consulting the main text, and finally to return to the tables, which will then acquire their full meaning. If the said reader believes that he notices contradictions in the main text or the tables, he is asked to take a second look at them, for he may be confusing contradictions in things and man with incoherence on the part of the author. If careful examination convinces him of such incoherence, the author would be grateful to hear of it. Table of Forms, Systems, Structures. Preliminary comments. This table, which certainly needs further completion, seeks above all to show the uneven development of forms, systems and structures, that is to say, the entanglement between ends and beginnings, destructurings, and restructurings, that history offers us. The forms, systems and structures considered are either products of praxis, or works of poiesis. It is important not to disassociate the two aspects of creative capacity. This table seeks to show how works and products have been deposited, secreted, by activity throughout its historical trajectory, and how they break up or dissolve. We could cite here a well-known text of Engels: the family represents an active principle. Systems of consanguinity, on the contrary, are passive, recording the progress made by the family at long intervals apart. And Marx adds that the same is true of the political, juridical, legal, religious, and philosophical systems in general. We leave aside the living body as network, system of systems, hierarchy of self-regulations, as well as the cortex, organ of accumulation, experience and memory. Just as we neglect the earth as an ensemble of self-regulations, atmosphere, precipitation, climate, soil, etc., we take certain propositions as established. These stabilities exist and constitute the real. A vast and conflictual, dialectical, becoming pervades them, which philosophies call cosmos or world, God, divine providence, spirit, life, will, and so forth. At each level of stability, this becoming seems exhausted. It seems reduced to a residue. Then contradictions resurge. Becoming recommences. It breaks or dissolves the stabilities. If we grasp creative capacity in human history using the terms praxis and poiesis, we are not seeking to construct an ontology under this cover. We must not ontologize history. So-called archaic systems. These arise in pre-capitalist societies, particularly agricultural ones. Cosmogonies and mythologies of which several survivors remain, symbols, proverbial expressions modified by the act of writing, the predominance of signs over symbols and, today, of signals over signs. The signs of the zodiac and astrological cosmogony. The symbolism of the elements, earth, fire, air, water. Languages and objects, flowers, precious stones, the ring, the symbolism of dreams, mythological systems, in particular the symbolism of Mother Earth, Greek mythology, etc., temporal and spatial cycles, governed by the number 12, number of the circle and the sphere, qualified space-times, represented and structured according to the numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, according to cosmogonies and societies. B. Transitional systems, attached to biological, physiological and territorial determinations, then broken by industrialization, but not without leaving survivors and traces. These are above all systems of objects. Systems of dress, determined by sex, age, caste or group, region, nation. Systems of food, according to the use of a staple, wheat, rice, maize, fat, oil, butter, etc. Systems of kinship, reduced by simplification to the conjugal family. Systems of ludic objects, ball, football, board game, tarot, playing cards, etc. C. Major constituted forms. These forms, issuing from urban life, have more generality than the previously mentioned systems. Origin, brief description, form of knowledge and knowledge of form, theory of logos, denotations, grammar, syntax, form of discourse, formal logic, coherence of discourse, geometry, defined and homogeneous space, perfect system, teleon systema, homogeneity of octaves in music. Greece, rhetoric, Greece and practical use of discourse, political use of discourse, theory of figures of rhetoric, code of connotations. Rome, formal law, governing equivalences, exchange, contracts, transmission of goods. Rome. Codification of rituals and 13th century customs, love, etiquette, etc. Formalization of spatial and temporal perception, perspective, standardizing of time. 15th century, 16th and 17th centuries, homogeneous and infinite space-time, Galileo, Descartes, Newton. Developed tonal system, Rameau. Combinatory conception of intelligence, Leibniz, Condillac, etc. Civil code, promulgated at the start of the 19th century, following earlier development with various interpretations of the law, generalized rules of exchange of goods and fair contracts based on the 18th century equivalent of goods and properties. Ruptures, dissolutions, destructurings in Europe. Renaissance systematization of the dominant theology. 1/5 to 19th the peasant community. Century the extended patriarchal family, lineage and household, with its system of kinship, cousinage, neighborage. Formal logic, attacked by dialectical thought, made flexible by the findings of science. 17th and 18th centuries, 19th century dogmatic and systematic philosophy, critique by Karl Marx of the Hegelian system, the teleon systema of philosophy. Competitive capitalism, with its blind and spontaneous self-regulations, under the double pressure of monopolies and the working class. 19th century, end of 19th to early 20th century, end of 19th language, logos, fetishized. To early 20th century and corroded, attacked by the image, etc. Classical perspective, reference to the horizon line. Tonal system, reference to the tonic. Absolute space-time, reference to Euclidean dimensions, the circular clock. System of nature, reference to mechanics, vital spontaneity. Real and solid perception. Art, fetishized and in the process of dissolution, like language, process of destruction and self-destruction. Dadaism, surrealism. Shift from signs to signals. Local and national systems of objects, clothing, furniture, food and situations, trades, functions and roles. Around 1910, 20th century collapse of philosophico-political systematization on a biological basis, racism, or territorial basis, fascism. 1945. Collapse of philosophico-political systematization on a class basis, socialism, as constituting a completely autonomous system in full development, and the capitalist system, another system in full degeneration. Virtual or complete explosion of the city. Possible explosion of the planet, perspective of the nuclear, death of the Earth. 1953 to 6 second half of 20th century new constitutions Everydayness, functionalized and structured in the disassociation of work and habitat, private life and leisure. The world of the image, audio-visual, the world-made spectacle. The car, with its demands, pilot object in the world of objects, prestige, 20th century. Destruction of cities, with its codification, the highway code, perfect system of the modern age. Technicality, technological objects, and its social base, techno-bureaucracy. The system of survival, survival as system. Praxis, preliminary comments. The Greek word praxis was reintroduced by Marx to avoid the confusions of the current word practice. It did not avoid contamination. Today, praxis encompasses several different meanings. It can denote any social activity, and thus human activity, including technology, poiesis, and also theoretical knowledge. It can also be contrasted with pure theory and knowledge, or that which claims to be so, which then brings praxis close to practice in the current sense. Finally, it can denote specifically social activity, that is to say, relationships between human beings, distinguished by legitimate abstraction from relations with nature and matter, technology and poiesis. It is the final meaning that we are seeking to discern and define. Is this not also the sense of the word in Greek? Pragmata are affairs in general, things treated or managed by human beings in their active relations. We shall develop the thesis of a multiplicity of possible analyses of praxis. The analysis of the Greek thinkers, determinism/chance will, does not seem to us incompatible with the distinction between the dominated and non-dominated sectors, even in history, nor with the difference between repetitive praxis and revolutionary praxis. The point of view of growth, technological, economic, and that of social development are complementary. The concept of praxis denotes this as determined and yet open onto the possible, as inexhaustible in the face of analysis. This concept also denotes praxis as site and origin of concepts. Praxis in the precise sense would then be the human real, on condition that it is separated neither from history and historical tendencies, nor from the possible. All praxis is situated in a history, it is a creator of history. Total history would thus be a history of praxis. It would tend, at the extreme, towards complete knowledge of human development. We shall simply give here a few stages and moments of it. L. Division of labor. Inequality of labor. Growing split between groups laboring on matter, pastoralists, farmers, artisans, workers, and groups operating on other human groups, warriors, priests, administrators, traders, educators, etc. Inequality of functions and struggle for the relative social surplus product in penury. 2. Exchange and trade, trade in men and trade in goods. Money, market and language. The generalization of the commodity and logical rationality, social use of the concept. 3. From powers to power, des pouvoirs au pouvoir, from social functions to the state of functionaries, notables, chiefs and kings. The political and the statal. Aesthetic. The political use of discourse as a means of action. 4. Classes and their struggles as major groups independent of territoriality. challenges and combats of groups and classes. Tactics and strategies, the instruments of combat, including ideologies. 5. From logical rationality to analytical rationality and dialectical reason. The grasping of society as a whole, in social labor, at the moment of its advancement as concept and revolutionary reality. In the state at the moment when, at its apogee, its withering away is glimpsed. 6. Constitution and consolidation of everydayness, which presupposes the extreme division of labor, corresponding to a praxis of analytical reason, functionalization and general functionarization, etc. Ambiguities of the everyday. 7. Technological and bureaucratic praxis. Society as a network of self-regulation. Poiesis. We use this term for human activity insofar as it appropriates nature, physis, around and within the human being, his own nature, sense, sentence and the sensorial, needs and desires, etc. Poiesis.is. Thus the creator of works, oevers. It includes foundations and decisions, with consequences that are unlimited despite being sometimes unperceived for long periods. Not all creation is poiesis, but all poiesis is creation. The word poetry restricts the meaning of the term. A further remark, technology and technological invention will remain for us outside the field of poiesis. If it is true that technologies master nature, the outside world, if they are therefore necessary, they do not suffice for the appropriation by human beings of their own nature. A distinction essential for determining the limits of technology in modernity and for correctly defining technological alienation. L. Foundation of the village, generally attributed to women, including sedentary agriculture, fixed habitation, the home, pottery, weaving, basketry, the beginnings of education of the young, etc. 2. The city in general, as spontaneous creation of social, religious and political participations, including sites of gathering, monuments gathering masses around them, ceremonies, processions, excitement or, rather, catharsis obtained in the course of a gathering, etc. 3. The Greek polis, foundation of the agora, site of free assembly. 4. The Roman urbs, foundation of the forum, an assembly marked by prohibitions. 5. The Platonic idea of absolute love, the unique love of one single being for another, in 13th century Western Europe. 6. The medieval city and the project of accumulation of objects, goods, wealth, technologies and knowledge, a process of accumulation gradually extending into the constitution of capital. 7. The foundation of ethnic groups, people and nationalities, large groups attached to a territory, to the possession of this territory, to fashions of clothing, food, etc. 8. The proposition of the total man, overcoming the division of labor, Fourier. 9. The unity of negations to constitute the new totality, Marx, the working class as bearing within it radical negativity. 10. Psychoanalysis as projecting a new catharsis founded on a transparency of individual consciousnesses, a direct communication between equal human beings, without involving magical operations, means of prestige and influence, opaque symbols and concepts with hidden implications, thus including an elucidation of conflicts. IL. the decision to change everyday life. The program of taking up moments or residues, art ceasing to be an end in itself, or a specialized and autonomized activity, to become a means for transforming the everyday and an instrument of real life. Thus constitution of total, worldwide, planetary man. Restitution of the completed moments into their preeminent reality and force. Creation of new moments, or, if you'd like to put it this way, new situations. Declaration of war on the cybernanthrope, as parody of total man, constituting a single and indivisible poetic act which should then be integrated into praxis, with the elucidation of practical consequences. Mimesis, preliminary commentary. The concept of mimesis does not coincide with that of imitation. Mimesis is not a psychic fact, but a sociological one, enveloping the psychic but overflowing it. In this sense, mimesis can be defined as an aspect or level of praxis. But it needs to be founded, created. Standing between repetition and overturning, revolutionary, invention, it has a relationship to poiesis. It is the mixed notion par excellence, or the notion of the mixed, mean, intermediate, mediator, middle along with language as such, or rather discourse. We ascribe to mimesis all activity that proceeds according to a form, and that moreover adds to its form. It depends then on an initial grasp, perception or intuition of the form. Subsequently it conforms to a greater or lesser extent. It may well give rise to a formalism that can distort the use and function of the form. It can also give rise to a conformism, apogee and paroxysm of mimesis. Contrary to widespread illusions, individualism in no way excludes mimeticism and the mimic as aspects of mimesis. On the contrary, in the human sand, each grain imitates the other grains, believing itself to be alone and separate. The form that mimesis follows may be logical, euridical, ceremonial, gestural, ritual. Mimesis, therefore, is not reducible to imitative repetition. It is inherent to educability, that is to say, to the relationship of teacher, maitre, and pedagogue with disciple and pupil, the relationship of parents and children. It makes possible exemplarity, filiation and affiliation. It is also inherent to the relationship of legislator and citizens, the prince and his subjects, or gods and their worshippers. Fashion is simply a minor aspect of mimesis. Shall we say that it secretes structures? That it deposits systems as concretions along its way? Yes, on condition that we do not separate mimesis from praxis and poiesis, and keep in mind the uneven, obstacle-ridden and conflictual character of becoming. L. Initial grasp of an imago mundi, model of the city, temple, houses, perhaps clothing, round or spherical form, rectangular or grid form. Use of these forms thus perceived. 2. Influence of partial systems of meanings, semiological systems, formulae of politeness, legal formalities, formalisms of polite society, formulas of love, etiquette, ritual, conventions, procedures. 3. General form of the reproduction of objects, situations, activities. Thus, form of accumulation of things that have become commodities, wealth, procedures and technologies. 4. Formation of the human reality, studied by the sciences of this reality, roles, attitudes, functions. Growing importance of models, patterns. Conformism and conformity. The reign of idols. 5. Simulation and the simulacrum as method of thought and life. The rise of a new kind in the human species, antagonist of total man, the cybernanthrope, caricature, simulacrum, parody, inverted image of total man. Irreducibles. Every activity that becomes optimized tends to constitute itself into a system, a world. In this way, it constitutes, expels and defines a residue. In the course of an analysis that will seek to grasp the relationship of the terms considered, the systems, forms, functions and structures, of praxis, poiesis, mimesis, in the sketch of a total human history, we shall have the occasion to demonstrate these irreducibilities. By the same token, we shall show that each residual element, residual from the point of view of the power constituted into a world, contains something precious and essential. We shall end with the foundational decision on an action, a strategy, the gathering of the residues, their coalition in order to create poetically in praxis a universe more real and more true, more universal than the worlds of the specialized powers. Power, puissance, residue. Religion, vitality, natural, carnal. Philosophy, the non-philosophical, the everyday, the ludic. The political, private life, privation of everything that the political takes hold of. The state and the statal, zététique, the singular and singularities. Liberty. Centralization, decentralizations, ethnic, national, regional, local. Mathematics, number and measure, drama. Structure, time. History, dialectical movement. The tragic. Technology and technocracy, the unusual. The imaginary. Cybernetic desire. Subjectivity. Art, become culture, food for mass consumption, creativity. Style. Mastery of the everyday and its metamorphosis. Bureaucracy, the individual. Organization, the deviant. The original. Moments and situations. Reason and rationality, technical or pragmatic. The irrational. The natural. Adaptation. The notion of normal. Character. The non-mimetic. Mimesis. Poetic capacity. Language and discourse. Speech. The unsayable and the unsaid. Meaning, sign, signifier, signified, the insignificant. The nuclear danger. The state of survival. Possible life beyond the gates of death. Chapter 2.